Located in California's Mojave Desert, Edwards Air Force Base is the heart of Flight Test Nation, sharing its rich aviation heritage with its neighbors, including U.S. Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale and the Mojave Air and Spaceport. Dating back to its origins as a training range in 1933, Edwards, then called Muroc Army Air Base, has been the scene of more major milestones in flight than any other location in the world. It was here, back on October 1, 1942, where the United States entered the jet age when the turbojet-powered Bell XP-59A Aerocomet lifted off from the dry lake bed and took to the skies over Edwards. The success of the jet test programs drew rocket-powered experimental aircraft to the base. The Bell X-1 arrived in late 1946, and on October 14, 1947, Captain Chuck Yeager flew the aircraft to a speed of Mach 1.06 and shattered the myth of the sound barrier forever. Among the aircraft tested during this period was Northrop's giant YB-49 flying wing. It was during a test of this prototype bomber in June 1948 that it broke apart in the sky, killing all 5 crew members, including Captain Glenn Edwards. 6 months later, the base was renamed in his honor. In 1951, the Air Force Flight Test Center was established, and the base became well known as the place where the rubber meets the ramp and the de facto center of American flight research, development, test, and evaluation. The promise of the turbojet revolution and the supersonic breakthrough were realized in the 1950s as the Air Force Flight Test Center tested and developed the first generation of true supersonic fighters, the famed Century Series. On May 25, 1953, North American's YF-100A Super Sabre became the first aircraft in history to fly supersonic on its maiden flight. During this period, Edwards also played a role in the development of systems that would provide the nation with true intercontinental power projection capabilities as it tested aircraft such as the B-52, C-133, and KC-135. It also supported the development of the high-altitude and long-range U-2. With the arrival of the 1960s, the Air Force Flight Test Center partnered with NASA's Flight Research Center at Edwards to explore the hypersonic and near-space flight regimes in the rocket-powered North American X-15. In 1961, flying the X-15, Major Bob White became the first man to exceed Mach 4, Mach 5, and Mach 6. Major White also became the first man to fly an airplane into space on July 17, 1962. The major aircraft systems that were tested and developed during the 1960s included the T-38, B-52H, F-4, C-5, and the triple-sonic SR-71 Blackbird. Digital systems and stealth capabilities were developed and tested during the 1970s at Edwards. The Air Force Flight Test Center delivered systems providing impressive combat capabilities to the warfighting commands, including the F-15 Eagle, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, the F-117A stealth fighter, and the B-1B bomber. During the 1970s, new propulsion lift concepts and flight control technologies were demonstrated on the YC-15 and were ultimately applied to the design of the C-17. Edwards re-entered the space arena in the late 70s and early 80s as it teamed with NASA's Dryden Flight Research Center for work on the Space Shuttle program. On April 14, 1981, the Space Shuttle Columbia landed on Rogers Dry Lake following its first orbital mission. This marked the first time in history that an orbital vehicle had left the Earth under rocket power and returned on the wings of an aircraft. Wrapping up the 1980s, Northrop's B-2 stealth bomber first took to the skies on July 17, 1989, as it flew from Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale to Edwards for developmental test and evaluation. Through the decades, the flight test milestones continued at Edwards. On November 3, 1990, Lockheed's YF-22A Advanced Technology Fighter prototype became the first fighter aircraft in history to achieve sustained supersonic flight without employing its afterburner. The aircraft attained a supercruise speed of Mach 1.58 at 40,000 feet. On February 28, 1998, the Global Hawk unmanned aerial vehicle took to the skies for the first time and conducted a successful autonomous mission. Today, the men and women who work at Edwards Air Force Base continue the mission of flight test and the development of integrated systems. Current programs include the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the Airborne Laser Test Bed, and the X-51A Waverider Scramjet. Dawn Waldman, Edwards Air Force Base, California.